If you wanted more Baby Yoda, this is the episode you have been waiting for. Episode 4 of The Mandalorian was a welcome surprise to the overall story so far regarding our favorite space dad and Baby Yoda. I have expressed that this wasn't my favorite chapter out of the 4 we have gotten, but that doesn't mean I think it was a bad episode. I still think the story that Jon Favreau is writing is still really solid. Ultimately, I felt that the pacing of Sanctuary was off and it's sometimes confusing, but beyond my personal nitpicks, this episode had a lot of heart and it had some breathtaking visuals that blew me away. The best thing Sanctuary does is present us with this slice of life in the outer reaches of the galaxy, and to be honest, this planet looks like it could be a moon of Endor. But beyond the pleasing forest planet aesthetic, we saw what life is like post-Empire, what it's like when there is peace. Not only peace within the community, but between machine and man. Well, that is until this idyllic, simple slice of life gets bombarded by a tribe of these alien barbarians who have coveted weapons of war left over from the Empire. And even if this episode was my least favorite, it has the best opening of the series so far. The mood goes from calm, serene peace to absolute dread, and our central conflict of the episode is set up. The rest of this episode plays out in a way that can only be described as obvious, and that's partly due to the fact of my age. I've seen so many movies that I can pick up a trope a mile away, and this episode was also almost a thesis on Seven Samurai, which is strange to say considering that film is already a heavy influence on Star Wars, but ultimately this episode was that film, but with the Mandalorian and the newly introduced Cara Dune as the samurai who will protect the village from the barbarians. Speaking of Cara Dune, I loved her beating the crap out of the Mandalorian for a few reasons. First, it shows that yeah, Mandalorian can be taken down by unsuspecting people, so he better keep his guard up. Also, it shows how ruthless his fighting style is. The first thing that came to my mind was Krav Maga. He will do anything and everything in a fight, but Cara Dune is his equal, if not more skilled, in close quarter combat. Sure, it's a stalemate, but if he wasn't wearing the armor, I think she would have kicked his ass. I like their dynamic together after they realized they weren't hunting each other initially, but I wish that aspect of their story was drawn out a bit longer. I think I would have enjoyed the episode a bit more, with more of that paranoia on both of their parts still going on, but that's my personal preference. With that said, the way the fight was broken up and how they get to the next part by a soup-sipping Baby Yoda was absolutely hilarious to me. It was perfect. So on an extremely positive note, like I said, every single scene with Baby Yoda was pure magic. I legitimately thought the button pressing joke scene was amazing and well-timed. This whole intro also gave us a glimpse of the Mandalorian being a bit more fatherly towards this little being. He's dealing with little Yoda like any parent would, and being a parent myself, it just was super funny to me. He's like telling it no, and then saying stop, and then he's picking it up, and he's having one-way conversations out loud with it, and the Mandalorian calling him a womp rat was pretty heartwarming. He's becoming a softie for this little green guy, even if he's not outwardly admitting so. Another positive thing I enjoyed about Sanctuary was the tension between Omera, who we met in the beginning of the episode, and the Mandalorian. There were some real vibes between these two, and again, this plays into the obviousness of this episode's plot and outcome for me. But I still really liked the two of them when they were on screen together. And when they are on screen together, we learn a lot about the Mandalorian with every interaction he has with her, down to the fact that he's never shown his face since childhood, and that he's not a natural-born Mandalorian. And if you guys follow me on Twitter, I'm sure that you saw this, but I loved how the Mandalorian reacted to how good of a shot Omera was. I felt like the way he looked at her, you know, if there was ever gonna be like a Cinemax level love scene in Star Wars, it would have happened right after this moment when she is just like an ace shot. It was super funny to me. In the native tribe of warriors, those evil people in the beginning that the farmers had to face reminded me a lot of orcs or the Gorax aliens from the second Ewok movies. They definitely were just like black and white, pure evil for evil's sake, which is sort of a bit cheap for me, you know? It kind of didn't feel as thought out as some other aspects of the series so far. However, I love the classic over-the-top alien speak that they had. You know, one guy actually goes by frame and he just goes, "Rawr." I thought that was actually really funny. So yeah, it totally made me just think of the Ewok movies. And what's interesting is they do seem super primitive, but they also somehow rigged up an automatic AT-ST walker. Unless I'm blind, I don't see any one of those guys operating the AT-ST during the climax of the episode. And that AT-ST was actually a highlight of the episode. I thought that the red eyes turning on and then it standing to full height was super intense and freaky looking. What's funny to me is Bryce Dallas Howard was in the Jurassic Park reboots. She's had had her fair share of running away from two-legged creatures. Because this is totally the Jurassic Park episode of The Mandalorian once this ends up happening. It was a total T-Rex in the forest vibe. The wide shots of the AT-ST in the moonlight as the farmers are waiting to engage in this ultimate battle at the end, it was amazing. So, we all probably figured out within the first 10 minutes of the episode, the Mandalorian, Cara, and the villagers are victorious against the tribe, causing them to fall back after obliterating the AT-ST. And it's all amazing. Cara Dune gets down to business and takes out the AT-ST. It was awesome. And all of a sudden, weeks have gone by. And this is what I mean by the pacing feeling off or unnatural at times. I didn't catch that weeks had passed until my second viewing, but hey, maybe that's just me. And unfortunately for the Mando, his stay on Sorgon is brief, because those fobs are still ticking away for Baby Yoda. He didn't even anticipate this. He thinks he's in the middle of nowhere and that he's safe. And those fobs might actually be going off for him as well. So this episode ends like all the others, and our Mandalorian is heading back out into space to find another place to keep himself and the little guy safe. Now, what was cool is before we leave, we almost get the Mandalorian revealing himself, and there seems to be more of that tension between him and Omera. And I think we'll come back around to that too. And I also think there's something sort of building up between Cara Dune and the Mandalorian as well. So we'll see what happens with that as the episodes unfold, because she's absolutely coming back too. So that's about it. The writing of the episode was great. The characters we meet were fantastic, and at times things were boiled down to its most simplistic presentation. It was a simple plot for us to get more of the human side of our Mandalorian and to show us other various struggles out in the galaxy that aren't directly related to the main conflict of Star Wars in general. To me, that part of it is brilliant. It's exactly what I want out of new Star Wars. So admitting that this was also my least favorite episode is a bit odd, and it really just boils down to pacing. So tell me in the comments what you think of Sanctuary. Was it your favorite episode? Did you enjoy Cara Dune and Omera? I'm curious if there's a bit of a love triangle forming, because some of the cinematic language used seems to suggest that. Oh, and we finally have live action Lothal Cats. That part was super cool. So as always, may the Force be with you, and AT-AT is signing off.